Countrywide Connect with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lamp.
Dr. Jason Archer, Head of Genetics, Beef and Lamb, New Zealand. Thank you very much for joining us on Countrywide Connect. This is Christmas Day for you.
Absolutely. This is an important day for us, right? Because this is probably the one day every 2 years that we really connect with our stakeholders on a larger group basis. And in a way, it's us holding ourselves accountable to them as well, because we're here at the good grace of our levy payer. But I think it's more than that. I get really excited by it, right? Because it's our chance to engage with people, to work out what they want for them to, but also for them to see the work that we're doing behind the scenes and the options that we're hopefully creating for them to take genetics further and faster into beyond boundaries that we haven't been able to tackle in the past. So,
Jason, how cool is it though? We just spoke to Tim Wilson there. Started breeding sheep at 7 years old, right? Has got his own flock now, his own stud flock. That must give you a lot of confidence for the future of the industry, for the sector.
So as you might have mentioned to them, I don't know, but we've actually sponsored about 20 to 25 young people. We were going to do 2 or 3. And we got such good applicants and such passion out there that we just said, like, we've got to find budget to bring the whole lot of them, right? And that's actually something I'm really passionate about personally, is getting our younger people and our succession plans into this space earlier rather than later, because there's a balance in breeding, right? There's phenotypic assessment of animals and structurally correct animals, and there's data and numbers and performance, and both are important. I think if we're too passive, people grow up with the phenotype and the assessment stuff, and they start on that stuff, and it's 10 or 15 years before they get exposed to the other half of breeding. And at that stage, they've got their own opinions formed, and we're too late. I just want to give these people chances to develop their own breeding, their own knowledge, their own breeding programs. And look, the world runs on people, right?
I asked him what he was looking forward to the most. He said, I've never been here before, wide-eyed, and said, I just want to soak everything in.
Yeah. And that's the attitude I hope, I know that they all have come here with, and we've put the asset on the audience to make sure they go and talk to those people. It's pretty intimidating when you're a young person. I probably can't remember when I did this first myself, but the first time you come to one of these events, it's like, here are all these big scary people who are at least 10 years older than me, and I don't feel able to walk up to them. So I put the asset on the audience to say, you need to go and talk to at least 2 of these people before they, because it's about networks for them and opportunities, and some of them are looking for jobs in genetics, and
and the networking that they'll do here will be priceless. Some of those great one-liners that they'll take away. Just having a look down at your presentation today, you launched nProve Tracker. Now, my dear friend Andy Thompson here.
For my sins, I was a dairy farmer, Jason.
Was a dairy farmer.
Okay, we'll forgive you for that, but you've come to the light now.
It's the beef. No.
And the problem is, Jason, is that he told me he was here to learn about all he's done for the last hour and a half is basically tell the sheep industry to learn from the dairy industry.
That tends to be what dairy farmers think. Yeah.
Exactly. But what is really good about nProve is where there is going to be some similarity. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so nProve Tracker is a tool that we're just releasing today, and it's really aimed at our commercial sheep and beef farmers, not so much our breeders. And the idea is, in the dairy industry, you've got a small enough number of animals, and they produce a large dollar value of product each that you can individually record them and do all that. Now, that's clearly not possible on a sheep and beef breeding structure. It's just the difference between the industries. But wouldn't it be great if I knew at the flock level what my breeding value for New Zealand maternal worth index, or what my number of lambs born BV was, so that I could benchmark my genetics. And we can do that. And so this tool does that just simply based on, tell us the rams that you've been buying and using and how you've been using them. So, have they been gone over just your young ewes, your old ewes, because that all affects your genetic gain. And you put that data in there, and then we can actually give you a prediction across your flock. What are you like for genetics? And I'm really excited about that because when someone comes to one of the ram breeders here and wants to buy a ram, the conversation can be much more informed, right? So here's where I am for reproduction. Here's where I am for growth. What do I need? At the moment, I think I'm all right for growth. I could do with a bit more scanning percentage maybe, but with no actual numbers behind that and no ability to say, well, actually my scanning percentage is where it is because of my genetics is holding it back, or is it my management holding it back, or my environment? So we can have a much more informed conversation about that. And then to take the dairy example even further, I would love it to turn into the similar thing to what the dairy industry does, right? In terms of when you sell a herd and it's got its capital value is bound up in its genetic value, right? So you talk about PW, right? BW. And so then if I'm retiring out of the industry and I'm selling my animals, I can actually recoup some of the investment that I put into genetics. So it gives me a reason to buy rams.
But and there's a big but here. For that to happen, that information has to be verified by a third party as such.
Yep. So at the moment, we're not going down that verification route. In time, we could look at how we could do that. And, there are different tools that we could use that. We could genomically sample a handful of animals and just make sure that the profile of the animals represents the size that we think you've used. So that can come in time. But right now, we're voluntary and not verified. It's a tool for you. At the moment, it's a tool for you to make your own decisions on.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not criticising it. No, I'm just saying if you're going to buy and sell on that.
Yeah, I'll take your point.
One thing that a question came up from the audience was around collaboration with meat companies. For that to work, what level of education do you put to agents?
To agents, as in
livestock agents?
Livestock agents. We don't probably engage with agents all that much.
It'd be a really great start for engagement of understanding on that.
It might. That's not their core business, right? We do engage with meat companies at the more strategic level in terms of direction.
But if it became a metric of price when selling breeding stock, then that would potentially be in their benefit.
Yes, but you have to talk to the agents and work out what their business is and what they want to do, right? So in the past, I've talked with some of the genetic stud stock agents, right? And actually they're fully on board with genetics, or some of them are anyway. Their challenge though is they work for all their clients, and no matter how they have to sell they have to sell my animals, no matter whether I'm a good breeder or an average breeder. So that's their business model, and that's just the reality of life, right? So yes, they can help, and look, don't get me wrong, there are people out there, Cam Higgy to name one, who does a great job of getting around, talking to people, and spreading the word. And
so with this particular, you talked about BV and PV, this is effectively a maternal worth measure, and you put a graph up there around that maternal worth over time as a huge success story of the sheep industry. How do you see that transpiring through the nProve tracker?
Yeah, so the maternal worth is just the index that we have that describes the core elements of a dual purpose productive sheep, and so there's a whole lot of add-ons that we can have to that. nProve tracker will be able to present information on anything that is basically available on the rams from the system. So it can present on indexes, it can present on individual breeding values, which gets more at the biological level. The maternal worth, though, I guess is our go-to summary of core productivity for a maternal breeding operation.
So just on the genetics and the slide here, the 5 key sheep genetic trackers that Sarah quite thankfully photographed and sent it to me. When you were working, on that, Are there trade-offs in the genetic work that you're doing? Like, obviously, we want facial excellence. We want all of these traits, but how do you work on the priorities, or are there trade-offs when you're working through this? You must see all of those numbers. How do you balance that?
Yeah. So just to take one step back, so those 5 key traits are what we call hard to measure traits, and they're really hard to improve or costly to measure, hard to improve traditionally. So that's why those 5, which are facial eczema, parasites, meat quality, feed efficiency, and methane, those last 2 being 2 sides of the same coin. That's why I've named those particular 5, but growth, easy to measure, but still just as important, right? It's just we've got a better handle on it. Same thing with fertility. In terms of how you balance all this stuff up, that's what we as geneticists, but also every ram breeder in this country are constantly doing, right? And almost never are they one-for-one correlated. So as long as you're measuring 2 things that might be need balancing, let's say, as long as you're measuring both, you can find animals that break whatever rule there, whatever association there is. So you can find the animals that do both, as long as you measure.
So with maternal birth then, and you're talking about this nProve tracker and this maternal, will you get a number like BWPW? You get numbers on which cow and where their traits are, up and down. Will sheep farmers or sheep growers?
You'll get a number on a flock.
Right.
Not on the individual animal.
Yeah, of course. That is a difference flock. Again. Yeah.
That is the difference. Just because we don't record animals at that individual level and record pedigree, but you get a number on the flock, and it will look just like the number that comes out of nProve currently, and that could be expressed on the actual dollar or biological scale, or it could be expressed as a percentile as to where you rank in the population, and that percentile is against the current ram breeding population. So we're actually going to expect that most commercial farms will the average commercial farm will be lower than 50 percentile just because of that lag that our ram breeders are making good gains. A commercial farmer buying rams has a generation or 2 lag behind them.
What is the one key message you want your farmers to take away from today?
I think it would be genomics is the opportunity. We've done it to a certain extent now, but we really need to accelerate it in terms of some of the key traits that we want to measure, which will enable us to farm or give us market access or give us market consumer acceptance. The opportunity is that we need to do that, but we need to do it as an industry in a more designed and planned way than what we're doing at the moment. So that's the really critical change.
Ms. Chief Science Advisor John Roach, who's been on the show talking about how there's no more money in the kitty, what would you say to him that strategically the government could do like they did for LIC back in the day for the dairy industry?
Yeah, so I mean, the government is supporting us in terms of co-funding some of the investments that beef and lamb wants to make, and that's really important, and we're really grateful for the government support. This industry does generate a lot of export revenue, and we do need to continue to reinvest in the industry to keep it on the trajectory that it's been on. And we all know the success story of the sheep industry over the last 25 to 35 years, right? It's, plummeting new numbers, and lamb output has barely budged. So we're much more efficient at what we do. This year we're more profitable. That may, long may that continue. But yeah, like this sector earns a lot of export revenue for the country.
Yeah.
And employs a lot of people.
Yeah.
It does.
Certainly
like
does.
Yourself.
Like myself,
Thank
but
you.
not like a lot of other people.
John, thank you very much for Jason. My apologies. Honestly, I'm having...
At least you didn't call him dairy.
It's been a long day.
Oh, I got in trouble at the deer industry conference. I called it the deer industry conference. I called it the dairy. I think I'm getting tested for dyslexia.
You had 2 strikes. That's your third.
It's been a big year.
Always a pleasure sharing.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
Talk to you soon.
Countrywide Connect with Andy Thompson and Sarah Perriam-Lapp.